Okay, I'm here at the Strengthening Disability Advocacy Conference in Melbourne, and I'm talking to Christina Ryan, who is CEO of Advocacy for Inclusion. You've just been part of a session on interstage rights, applying a human rights-based approach to person-centred service delivery, and I'm sure we'll get to that language at some point. But you arrived with a prepared speech, and you started off by asking who in the room was a human being.
Yes.
What were your main messages to this session?
I asked that question, who is a human being? Who here is a human being? Interestingly, only about half the room put their hand up, and I found that a bit weird, but we use that question when we do human rights training with self-advocates, because once you understand that you're a human being, and you get human rights because you're a human being, that changes everything. And it makes a really big impact on self-advocates. So I was interested that half the people in the room didn't see themselves as human beings, but they are. So everybody gets human rights. If you're a human being, you get the same human rights as everybody else, and that was the key point. And that means we're all equal. Everyone is equal, and that is the fundamental statement of human rights. And yet people with disabilities aren't. We know that those of us who are people with disabilities who operate every day in whatever situation we're in know that we don't have the same rights as other people, that there are things that are denied to us. Even the right to speak or the right to make our own decisions is denied to people every single day. In the first panel this morning, there was a woman whose children had been removed. She does not have the right to be a parent the same as anyone else does. There are other people who've talked to us about not having the services that they need. They're not living with dignity. All of these things are about rights and about people with disabilities not having their rights respected.
Now, there were many issues that you raised that we won't have a chance to talk about now before the conference resumes. But one of the important challenges you put out was to the organisations that actually support people with disabilities should, as you say, be of and from. No? What was your point?
We should be by and for. It is the catchphrase of the disability rights movement, nothing about us without us. And the challenge I have put to the conference today and to disability service providers, to disability advocacy organisations, is to get their act together and to make sure that they are run by, owned by, staffed by people with disabilities. Not just one token person in the room, but at least half of their board, at least half of their staff, at least half of their members must be people with disabilities. And we would hope to see that increase over the years.
What is it at the moment?
At the moment, very few organisations have any people with disabilities working for them. Very few organisations have people with disabilities on their boards at all, and very, very few have a membership that is comprised of people with disabilities. It is other people. So it's a real challenge for our sector and for support organisations to be working on this one. Until that happens, people with disabilities are not owning the services. It's one thing for us to direct our own individual services and to say, I want my services provided by this support worker on this day of the week. That's one part of self-determination. But until we own and operate our own services and our own advocacy, we're not getting anywhere with self-determination. We're still being spoken for by other people.
Now, we spoke on Twitter this morning because you're very upset about the what's happened with the NDIS portal, and I have to admit that I didn't know much about it, but we've also just had a session where we had a representative of the NDIA here, and some problems were raised very much with that. One, that the portal problem is not just a glitch, it's a fiasco, but there was also problems for people who have started to join the NDIS rollout. What's your message to the NDIA at the moment about this?
It's a big one. The key message for the NDIS to really get on board with here is the system has been designed to do what it needs to do, to support people with disabilities, to have their rights, to be supported, to get out there and do their stuff. The system has also been designed to allow people to run their own package if they're in a position to do so and want to do that. It's about choice, and some people do choose to run their own package. Unfortunately, they've got bureaucratic and they've gone backwards and they've tried to retrofit that system, that legislation, that structure that's been put in place so that people with disabilities are still being checked on, still being approved, still having to be vetted every step of the way. And it's taken the control away from people with disabilities. I was particularly concerned by the NDIS person suggesting that people are given their money. Nobody is given any money. everybody has to seek reimbursement. So people who are self-managing are allocated an amount of support that they're entitled to through their plan, but they must spend the money up front and then seek reimbursement. It's not even as advanced as the Medicare system, where you can get the money back almost before your credit card payment has processed from your doctor. So it's a whole furphy what they're describing, and it's taking more and more control away from people with disabilities and putting it back into the hands of bureaucracy, and more importantly into the hands of service providers, because it's easier for people to just say, I'll let the service providers keep managing. We cannot be expecting people with disabilities who already have a huge amount on their plate. They're already people who need the NDIS, so they're the ones who have high support needs. We cannot expect those people to be doing the level of bureaucratic paperwork that is required to self-manage packages under this system. It wasn't designed that way, it doesn't have to happen that way, but it's about bureaucrats not trusting us to run our lives and to know what we're doing.
Was there anything in the trials that pointed the way to how to do it properly?
The trials primarily operated under the intended system. It was only just before the 1st of July this year that they moved to this new system without any warning. They didn't tell anyone it was coming. They simply implemented it. They took our control away from us without even asking, without any planning, without any notification.
So watch this space very heavily and very closely.
Well, it's a debacle and it has to be fixed because people are not able to control their lives and they're not getting the support they need.
Christina, I could talk for a long time, but everyone's heading in. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Murray.